Hi, my name is Stephanie Joy Phillips. I'm the founder of World Childless Week, and you've joined us here tonight for the webinar called Ways to Remember and Release the Grief of Childlessness. I'm here with 5 amazing ladies. I want to say welcome to all of you, which is Vicky, Leslie, Susan, Kiara and Marielle. Thank you for joining me tonight. As we go through this webinar, you'll be giving more of an introduction and sharing a little bit of your story and why you're here and what you want to share. So we're going to start now with lighting a candle. So if you've got a candle, if you'd like to take hold of it and light it with us. The reason we're going to light the candle for the start of things is actually to connect us. God, I'm getting emotional. It's the last day. It's bad, isn't it? But because we're around the world, we're far away from each other, but we're close to each other when we come on here. When we go into, I've been like this all day, knowing this webinar was coming up. I know it's the one in the week that would get me. So it's going to unite us to say that we're not shoulder by shoulder across the world physically, but we are when we join together online, in communities, and wherever we reach out and connect. So I'm going to just light mine. There you go. That's my candle to say I'm here with you tonight, sending my love, sending my strength, sending my courage. So we're going to talk about different ways that we release the grief that we've got inside, ways that we remember the grief, the ways that we honor the grief, the ways that we accept the grief, that it's part of our life, but it doesn't have to be all of our life. So we're going to start off with talking about the physical ways that things that we can do and the ways that we can remember, as in something we can touch, something we can feel, something we can visit. And so the first discussion is, I'm going to hand this over to you, Marielle, and you can share the items that you've got that sort of fall into this category, please.
Hi, everybody. My name's Marielle, and I live in Sussex in the UK, where I work as a counsellor and therapist, mostly with people who are childless, not by choice. And I'm also childless, not by choice, for various different reasons have led me to this place. And I'm going to talk about the ways in which physical and visual things have helped me to heal from my own childlessness, and have actually made it possible for me to do the work I do with other childless people. I often say that I've been able to, through my own healing and my own healing journey, turn around to the people who are coming up behind me and try and help them along the path as well, which is really important to me, because I think we all know what a difficult path it can be, and how you need other people around you, and you need other people to help you, because it's really tough. So one of the things that really helped me, as I said, is things that are visible and tangible, things that I can touch and hold and see, and things that I have with me all or most of the time. And that's one thing that's really helped me. And a few years ago, I realized that, for example, if I saw pregnant women in the street or people with small children, I would feel very sad, and I didn't know what to do with those feelings. So I would just squash them down, which really wasn't the most helpful way of dealing with it. So I was fortunate at the time to meet another childless, not by choice woman who lived locally to me, who told me that she was a jeweler, which gave me an idea. And I'm just going to hold this little, I don't know if you can see this, but this is the box that this idea came in. So I asked her, I commissioned her to make me a ring. And the reason I asked her to do this was, my thinking was, every time I felt sad, I would label the feeling to myself, and then I would metaphorically pour the feeling into the ring. Again, I don't know if you can see it, it's got a little green stone in it. I'd metaphorically pour the feeling into the ring, so that it had somewhere to go. I wasn't pushing it aside, but I could still get on with my everyday life without those feelings really troubling me, getting in my way and getting in the way of how I related to other people. And so she agreed, and on one of our meetups for coffee, she brought a selection of little stones with her, which was really exciting. And I chose this one, and she went away and made it into a ring, which was amazing. And every time I wore it, and these feelings came up, I would do exactly that. I'd put them into the ring, and they would be safe in there. And then when I had more time, I was in a better place, I could pick them up, the feelings, and have a look at them. But that's one of the things that I did to help myself heal from childlessness. But even before that, I did something else, somewhat more permanent. There was a time, well before the ring, where I had to get over a really massive disappointment, which was to do with my childlessness. And I had always wanted to have a tattoo. And I suddenly had this idea that I would have one on my wrist. And again, they're very, very small. I don't know if you can see them, but I had the letter L tattooed on my left wrist, and it isn't so I can tell my left from my right, although that is an additional benefit of having it there. It's over my pulse point. So when I put my thumb on the little letter L, I can feel my pulse, my heart beating really strongly. And the reason I did that and had it in that location was because of this massive disappointment that I had as part of my journey towards not becoming a parent. So every time I just would go through phases of thinking, well, just what's the point of my life now? I can't have children. So really, what's the point? What am I going to do? So when I felt like that, I put my thumb over the letter L, feel my heart beating, feel my pulse, and it would remind me that I still had important things to do in the world, and I still had love to give. It didn't matter that I couldn't have children, because there was still a point to my life, which has proven to be absolutely true, although it was hard to see it at the time. And I think that's what these visual reminders do for me. When it's hard, when you're in an emotional and challenging place, and it's hard to feel that there's a point to your life, or there's a purpose, or there's things for you to do that are still useful and that matter in the world, that's when having something visible really helped me. I couldn't see it at those times, but if I used my ring or put my thumb over my tattoo, it was enough to remind me, to get me back on the path, to get me back to feeling better again. And they're the things that worked for me. Everybody's different. And I've written a blog about this, and I'll put a link to it in the chat, because it goes into a bit more detail. It makes other suggestions for different things that you could do. And obviously we've got another fantastic group of people who are going to be talking to us today about what they've done to help them heal. But yeah, visual and tangible things really work for me. So that's what I've chosen to do. And what's really interesting is, as you can see, this ring is in its box, and that's because I don't wear it anymore. I actually don't need to. I keep it because it really matters to me, but I don't wear it, and I haven't done for ages. I can't remember the last time I actually put it on. What I'm thinking of doing with the stone now is having it taken out of the ring by my same jeweler friend of mine, as I say, who's also childless, having it taken out of the ring and combined with two other stones of different colours and made into something like a necklace. So that it's going to, again, it will remind me of different things. I think that's because my grief at not having children is always going to be with me to varying degrees. But having this ring turn into something else, I think will really show me that there's much more to me than just being a childless woman. It's much more to my life. And yeah, all the colour and variety that my life is now. And and the fact that it's a good life. So that's my thing. That's the thing that's worked for me, basically.
That's really lovely, Maria. Really nice. I love the reason behind where the placement of the tattoo is. So incredibly important. Yeah. Did you want to read a little bit of your blog?
Oh yeah, I will just quickly read a bit of it. I just didn't want to take up too much time because I want to make sure everyone else has time to share their things. But anyway, and I'll pop this in the chat as well. But I wrote in my blog that a couple of years ago, I noticed that I wasn't fully able to acknowledge that I was living a happy and fulfilling life. Something was holding me back. I realized that a part of me thought that moving on and recognizing my happiness meant that what had happened to me didn't matter anymore. My struggle to have children did matter, and my grief was real. This was an important part of my story, even though it was no longer affecting my life on a daily basis. When I felt sad, when I grieved and mourned, when I felt the familiar pangs of loss, I would imagine that I was placing those feelings in the room. They were safe there. They were honoured and remembered. They were always with me, but they were contained and manageable, and I could smile and be happy and enjoy my life, even though I didn't forget. And it worked. I found that those lingering feelings that were holding me back were fading away, and my happiness and contentment were increasing. Less and less did I need to carry out the invisible ritual of acknowledging and naming my feelings and then placing them carefully in the ring for safekeeping.
Thank you. It's really lovely. A lot of people in the comments already are saying they can relate and connect, and they really understand what you're saying, and they're appreciative of your words, which is really beautiful.
Oh, thank you. I look forward to going and having a look at those comments in a minute. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for listening.
Right. The next thing that came to my mind when I thought of sort of, again, releasing the pain, but expressing ourselves to also create a positivity to remember as well, is through writing, which everybody knows I'm avidly a fan of saying, write about the past, about the present, about the future, to get your words out, to get your story out, however you want to do it, through journals, through letters, whichever the way suits you best is the way that you should follow. Never force yourself to do something you don't. And on that note, I'd like to say, Susan, if you'd like to come in and introduce yourself, share a little bit about yourself, and then share your words, please.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name's Susan Darlington. I'm an arts journalist and a poet based in Leeds in England. I just also like to quickly thank Meriel for her little speech there, which was very incredibly moving, and I can relate to it in so many ways. I think as she has used the body in a way to express things, as Stephanie said there, I've been using writing, which I find an incredibly powerful tool. So I primarily write about nature and about the female experience. And certainly in latter years, I've been writing more and more about children and the lack thereof. For a long time, I was very ambiguous about having children. I think in my late 20s and early 30s, I had some mental health problems, and I felt that it was very unfair to bring a child into the world with the fear that in some way that they would inherit those problems. But then in my late 30s, I felt like I was in a very stable place. I met my current partner, and we really wanted to have children. But unfortunately, at that point, I went into early menopause, which triggered an awful lot of feelings of regret, of self-recrimination for kind of not doing something earlier, and guilt. And in some ways, I worked through a lot of those emotions through writing, which I think it can be, for myself, it was incredibly helpful. But when I was reading these poems in public, I got a fantastic response for them, which was, to me, is the greatest honour that you can have, if that you're touching people and they can relate to what you're saying. Even though in this instance, I kind of wish that we weren't in this position, that we didn't have this shared grief. So the piece I'm going to read tonight was written towards the end of this process, and I don't think we ever stop grieving, but we have an acceptance maybe. And so as this entire webinar is about releasing that grief, this piece is me sort of trying to look to the future and sort of trying almost to convince myself as much as anything that things do get better. And so this piece is called The Art of Childlessness. The art of childlessness is a matter of semantics. It's not about being childless, although it's certainly true you'll never hold a newborn who has your own green eyes, or have a daughter you'll love with such tender fierceness. You want to lock her in a tower away from the world's cruelties. It's not about being less of anything. It's about being child-free. Free to spend time dancing until the heart-light dawn, finding your own rhythms that are giddy, raw and real, knowing that no matter what, alone, you are complete. Thank you. Thank you very much.
No, it's a beautiful poem, and I know you shared a few with me and they were all gorgeous, but that one, it felt perfect for tonight.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I agree. I think that some of the others, as I said, I worked through a lot of that kind of process, and those were some of the ones that you saw.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think that this one, yeah, it's as I said, it's about moving forward as much as anything, and
yeah,
knowing that, yeah, knowing that things do get better in some way. Yeah,
and sometimes we take a step backwards, and that's fine. But
yeah.
like you say, the words to express yourself today for any moment in time about how you feel, and having that freedom to do that, and to just share it with yourself. You don't have to share it with anybody else, and you have done. You know, I'm grateful for you sharing the words, but again, we can keep those words to ourselves and stay private. And I think with writing as well, it's also a case that you could rip the words up. You could light them on fire and burn them. You could put them into the stream or into a breeze and release that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think writing can be, sometimes it can be about, it can be about putting it out there in the public and hoping to connect, but it's equally valid just to write in a journal in any way, just getting it out of your system, just verbalizing things that you don't want to tell anybody else. I think that, to me, is one of the most important things. It's just talking about how you're feeling, and that talking too can just be to a page. I think so many of us will have written diaries when we were younger about, who we had a crush on or all that stuff, and we forget to do that when we're older. But it serves such a valuable purpose, and I really would encourage people to do that, or just to find some way of expressing themselves.
Definitely. Thank you. Thank you very much. The next one, obviously saying there with writing, it can be about supporting yourself as an individual. It's something you can keep private and not share. But alongside the writing, I constantly say, join a support group, share how you're feeling, and you'll get that validation and that support and the encouragement to sort of, speak out more, say more, share those emotions, the dark ones, until one day you can find the lighter ones. So connecting with those around us like we're connecting tonight is important. But when we can use that in different ways as well, that sort of almost you're supporting others as well alongside supporting yourself. So Vicky, that sort of brings me to you in Clem's Gardens. If you'd like to share your story next, please.
Gosh, thank you, Susan. What beautiful words. I don't quite know how to follow that, but I'll tell you a little bit of my story. So I'm Vicky. I'm based in Yorkshire in the UK, in a place called Huddersfield. I guess I'm not too far from Susan. In 2009, my husband and I were expecting our baby Clem, who we'd waited for a long time, but early in pregnancy, we realised that the pregnancy was ectopic and we had to let Clem go. And in the subsequent years, it just became clear that for reasons the doctors could never quite get to the bottom of, I wasn't going to be able to have kids. So in the years that followed, I think they were very lonely, insular years, if I look back. And a turning point for me was actually making a move, not because of losing Clem, but because of other circumstances. We moved up to Yorkshire and we took on an incredible renovation project. We decided we were going to adopt a building and put our love and care that we would have put into our family, into this building. And in the grounds of the building, there was a plot of land, and we took some time to think about what to do with this plot of land. In the meantime, I stepped out and took a risk and started to connect by joining the Gateway Women Group in Leeds. And I found some incredible support and understanding there, where I hadn't been able to talk about my experiences with other people. It was just so hard to find the words and so hard to find the people who would understand so readily. The Gateway group were amazing. And I met my very best friend Lizzie there. And over time, an idea began to formulate that this plot of land next to the house, what if we could do something really meaningful with it? And the idea that came about was to create a garden, Clem's Garden. And Clem's Garden is a social enterprise that Lizzie and I and our other halves, Dion and Dunk, have set up. And we set it up as a place where people, particularly people who are a little bit older, who weren't mums and dads, or nans and granddads, could come together and use their nurturing and use their experience and use their love and their skills in a different way. That we could nurture flowers together. We could grow flowers and use these flowers to send love out into the local community. So we launched Clem's Garden in 2017 as a community interest company. We're all volunteers, and we all come together to grow these beautiful, sustainable, environmentally friendly flowers. We cut the flowers and we make them into bouquets and bunches to sell, and we donate all the profits to other community projects in the local area. And we use our flowers to also inspire kindness and neighbourliness in the local community. We encourage people to take our flowers and use them as a reason to knock and look out for people outside of their families, people who might be more isolated, the people who don't have families at the end of the phone if they're going through a difficult time. And it's an incredible thing. 4 years on, the community is really embracing us. They're really helping us send these flowers out and connect in the local community, so that our community isn't just a place where people say it's a brilliant place to raise your kids, which is what I heard when I moved here and my heart sank. It can be a brilliant place for everybody. And for me, this is my legacy. This is me trying to do something with the values I would have liked to have instilled in my Clem. And I'm hoping that it's something that my Clem could feel proud of, something in his or her memory that makes a difference to me every day. And just having the chance to use Clem's name in such a positive way from day to day makes a difference to me and has really helped me move forward in my grief.
Thank you, Vicky. I think Clem's Garden is just an amazing thing to have started, and to connect so many people to do something that, you know, it's releasing their emotions in a positive way and helping others, nurturing through their hands on the garden. You know, there's nothing negative to say about what you started. And I think Clem would be extremely proud of what you've done. Extremely proud. I don't realise that. Thank you. Gosh, there's so many different ways already between us that we use our grief in ways that are positive to support other people as well as supporting ourselves, which should always be the priority, and the connections we make through doing this. it just amazes me. And we've talked about the power of word in different ways through the poem, which leads me to you, Chiara, if you'd like to share your story. And that would be really good. Thank you.
Hi, thanks, Steph. My name's Chiara. I live in Glasgow in Scotland, in the UK. And I was having a look, Vicky, at the website for your garden actually just yesterday, and I just really want one where I live. You've kind of inspired me to, I love the thing that I read that said about a place for people to give love, that you know, other people have got family members they can give love to. This is a place they can give love to. I thought that was just wonderful, because I remember a time, and still feel that quite often, that it's that place that you would pour your love, isn't it? But you know, we don't have that as a child. So to have that, and also the togetherness that you then create through other people doing that, that's really wonderful. So I love your garden. So I'm a singer-songwriter, and I usually write songs about what's happening in my life. Usually they're not very good things. So it's kind of normal for me to write songs about sort of grappling with my experience. And I think the same as when you write, the thing about writing a song is you can say exactly what you want to say. You can put, and maybe you can even say it to a person that you couldn't say it to. You can say it in exactly the way you want to say it. So that's always a real release for me with songwriting. And I started writing some songs for what was happening to me at the time, which was beginning to realize that I wasn't going to have children. Yes, I didn't really meet the right person at the right time, or perhaps even the wrong person at the wrong time. So I kind of found myself, I kind of thought I was all right with it all. And I think what I did, which was what Mariel was talking about, was I just, every time I felt a difficult feeling about sadness around not having children, I just squashed it down. And I also just kept thinking, oh, it'll happen. And I got into my 40s and I met somebody who had children. And I think that's when it all came to the surface for me. I suddenly realized that we were sort of in this family, but they weren't my children. And I really, the feeling that hit me then was like I eventually wrote an album called Sea Monster. And the reason I called it Sea Monster was it felt like I'd pushed all the feelings down underneath the sea. And being in this situation, they came up like a monster, basically, like something that was just, I was trying to just get on with my life, and this thing was flailing around, upsetting everything. And that, as I discovered over time, was my grief. And it took me a long time to work out what was happening, because this was back in 2013, when nobody was really talking about childlessness and the grief around childless. I didn't know what I was experiencing. I really just didn't know. And eventually I found Gateway Women, and I found people that had gone through a similar experience. This is what they were calling it, and it all just started to make a lot of sense to me. So I found myself writing songs around what I was feeling, and normally I would put them together in an album when I had enough songs. And what I found in this situation was I decided to make an album just about my childlessness, because I felt like it was such a big thing that was happening to me. I didn't want it just to be a few songs on an album. And I also felt that it could be a tribute, so all the songs in one place. And I spent a lot of time doing the cover of it. And I also wanted to, I could have written 10 really sad songs. That would have been quite easy. But I by the point that I released the album in 2018, so at that point I'd come out of the real darkness, and I wanted to write a song about every different aspect of my grief. So there's maybe the angry song, there's maybe the coming to realize what's happening, there's maybe coming through the other side, there's a song that I wrote to my partner at the time with the children because he didn't understand it. So that was what I'd really like to have said to him if he could have understood it. And having all those songs in one album, it was a tribute. It was a way of saying, oh, this is something really, this was really important to me. This is a really important part of my life. And I then went on, actually, what I found when I did gigs was it was very difficult to talk about the subject matter. I felt quite embarrassed, or I didn't want it to, it was difficult anyway. So eventually, with a friend, I wrote a play where I tell my story and I sing the songs through it, and that felt like I could really kind of go into it. And I guess a mixture of people came to that. There was other people that were childless not by choice, but other people as well. So I suppose that was my way of hopefully trying to explain to not us, because we know how this feels, but maybe to the other people who don't. So because I've always felt with the songs I was writing that was really important to me. I want people to. I think it's important that people understand. I know they can't understand every tiny little bit of what we feel, but they're just aware that it exists. Really, our feelings and that grief around childlessness is a thing. And I think in the long term that'll be helpful to us and to everybody else. So I wanted to play. I was trying to decide, it was quite difficult for me to decide which song to play from the album, and because they're sort of at different stages, but actually even over the course of everybody's talking tonight, I think I've decided to play Somewhere New. And I wrote this, I looked into adopting and decided for various reasons it wasn't for me. I didn't really feel that that was the way forward for me. And I remember when I'd kind of decided that, a few weeks after going to the first stage of going through the adoption process, I made that decision. And not long after that, I started to feel, through the sort of tunnel of grief, I think I started to feel light for the first time. And I started to feel like Mary was saying, there's a life worth living. So this is called Somewhere New. There was the time when I would do most anything to change the way I breathe, and every choice, every left and right and sweet goodnight I whispered haunted me, like a player in a casino game. I was bargaining with fate, a little drunk, a little late, but the mist is clearing now, and I think I see the way, and it's leading somewhere new. That's okay, I leave behind the things I didn't know I wouldn't need along the way, traveling light. I can run and chase the sun, depending on the day. Sometimes I take a look behind just to see how far I've come, and I'm not the only one. And the mist is clearing now, and I think I see the way, and it's leading somewhere new. That's okay. Oh, yeah. But I still get lost sometimes when the light is dim. The branches brush my face and I hear the fear within. Yeah, I still get lost sometimes. And the mist is clearing, and I think I see the way, and it's leading somewhere new. Yeah, the mist is clearing now, and I think I see the way. It's the road to somewhere new. That's okay, that's okay. Oh, it was all fingers and thumbs there.
It was beautiful, honestly. It was beautiful, Kiara. It came across really well. I'm so glad that the sound and the connection held out for you. And
good, I'm glad, yeah.
I love the fact, in a way, that we were saying about the spontaneity of doing what's right for you in that given moment, not 5 minutes before or 5 minutes after, and you decided on your song there and then because of what everybody's already been talking about.
Yeah, it's because that song was really the first one that I wrote about, there's a future, and it's not the future I thought it was going to be, but I think it's going to be okay, and that was I remember I was standing in the kitchen. I'd had a long time where even going home was difficult. I didn't even want to be in my space at home. I couldn't calmly make my dinner, or those things that you do normally without thinking. And then that feeling came into me, which was like, oh, I think it's going to be all right. And yeah, it's an important time when you feel that.
Yeah. You have those moments,
even though it's not all right all the time, it's still that big one, that real big turning point. I'm sure a lot of us remember that.
Definitely.
So
thank you. No, it's beautiful. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you.
Right, the next part is I'm actually going to ask people to return to their candles again. God, I'm going to get emotional again every time I think of the candles. What we did a few years ago is, for World Childless Week, is ask people to share the names of their children, the names they chose, but obviously were never able to use. So I'd like to invite you to have a minute's silence. But if you want to share the name of your children in the chat, then I'd love to know the names, to sort of show that we acknowledge them, that they're here with us tonight. If people are still typing names after a minute, I'll continue the silence so that we have that space. Thank you, everyone. I think it's really important to acknowledge their names. And doing that tonight, I think, just sends them that extra little bit of love that we've got in our hearts every day. Thank you. Leslie, I'd like to come to you next, please.
Wow.
No, it's hard. It's been a very emotional night, obviously, for me, and with everything that everyone's saying. But if you're okay to carry on, do your reading, share a little bit of your story as well first, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, it's wow. You've probably seen me nodding quite a lot all the way through this, because I've resonated with just about everything that the different ways. It's beautiful, isn't it? How many different ways we have. So yeah, I'm also from Yorkshire, actually, same as Susan and Vicky, which isn't that lovely. We had 6 rounds of IVF, which of course didn't work, and I didn't realise I was grieving, because that was many years ago. A little while after that, my mum died, and a bit like Kiara was saying, she put her grief, I think, under the water. You said mine went in a box, and a few years, 7 years ago, my dad died, and just more and more went into that box, because, you know, we're from Yorkshire, we don't grieve, we just keep calm and carry on. That's what we do. And I'd always been writing from journaling, and you know, as I think Steph said earlier, journaling for me was really helpful. And I set up a website for childless women, and I'd started collecting stories of women who made it through, because for me, one of the things that was really helpful was seeing people who were further down the line, and I guess that's why a lot of you are here. You know, it helps us to see, doesn't it, people who've made it through, but in different ways. And when I had a number of stories, and I thought, I wonder what they've got in common. And so I started therapy, because the box was so full, and it kept bursting open. I kept getting angry and all of that sort of thing, and I reluctantly went to therapy. And that combined with working through all the different ways that people had worked through their grief, came to my book, which has to be just placed there. But one of the things for me, I think, is that I think, as Kiara said in her song, it's going to be all right. And I think there is like, we are changed by this process, and that change can be positive. So what I'd like to do, I'd like to read an edited bit of chapter 15 from my book, which is called Yes, You Are Stronger in the Broken Places. And I just, a little bit of explanation through the book. I've got stories of a number of other women, 19 actually, and so I'll share some little extracts of how they thought they'd change. Some of the names you'll probably recognise, others you won't. So here we go. The world breaks everyone, and afterwards many are stronger at the broken places, which is quote by Ernest Hemingway. Kintsugi is the Japanese practice of repairing fractures in porcelain with varnish or resin, powdered with gold, silver or platinum. Each piece looks different and is unique. The scars form part of its history and add to its beauty. It's also stronger and won't break in the same place again. So it is with us. By now, you've read many stories, so you know that each woman was broken in different places and that she put herself together in her own unique way. The suggestion that I too might be repaired with gold came to me when I read Tracy Cleante's book, The Next Happy, and it seems obvious. What you've been through has brought out both the best and the worst in you, and through it you will have discovered some qualities you didn't know you had. Here are a few examples. Lisa Manterfield, I'm stronger and more compassionate than I was. I really understand how people can be carrying around huge hurts, and I'm much tougher and more willing when I see someone needs help through a difficult time. Jessica Hepburn, I'm fundamentally the same person, but I do believe that all our life experiences shape us. I think everyone in the world is dealing with something that hurts them. My hurt was not being able to have my own biological child with the man that I love, but the key to life is about making up for the sad and the shit things. If there's one single thing that's different about me now than in the past, it is that I understand and embrace that at a deeper and profound level. Helen Rebello, I'm confident about who I am and what is important to me, and I'm much better at taking ownership of that. I believe that we all have the resources to deal with whatever comes our way, even if we don't always know it at the time. Tracy Cleantes, I still have the wound of this loss. I always will. It will never go away, yet it no longer hurts as it did. Now I can actually say that I'm truly happy that it all worked out as it did. August, I'm a more balanced, self-aware, self-loving version of me. I've learned more about myself going through these hard years than I ever would have without them. And although I certainly wouldn't want to relive the pain, I'm grateful for the wisdom and insight it has eventually brought me. Jodie Day, I genuinely believe that going through the grief of childlessness has had a profoundly transformative effect on me as a person, for the better. I am kinder, more patient, more compassionate, and more empathic than with all who suffer. Childlessness has also made me braver. I've lived through my own worst nightmare and survived, so I know how resilient I am. Enza, I feel stronger and surer of myself and less concerned about what people think about me. Louise, along the way, I've learned life can be tough. Some things are not just meant to be, to expect the unexpected, to rise every time I fall and never to ask the question, do you have children? Callie Bird, for me, it's a profound gift of happiness. I could never imagine I would be content to be so happy. So that gift for me is the gift of deep happiness that came about by not getting what I thought I wanted. Liz, I've learned a lot from my experiences and gained strength and compassion. Life is hard and we don't always get what we want, but we have to make the most of what we do have and focus on the positives. I try and focus on what I have and not what I don't, which is, I think, a really beautiful selection. So my story, for many years after we finished IVF, I stumbled along, not really thinking about things, getting on with life in my Yorkshire way. Looking back, I now realise just how numb and empty I was during that time. I'm very different now. I guess the bottom line is I feel much more comfortable in my own skin. I hardly recognise the younger Leslie. Yes, at the core, she is the same. And over the years, many of her wonderful characteristics became hidden. Working out who I am, who that authentic Leslie is, has been a process of uncovering these and using them in my life. Learning to grieve has put me in touch with my emotions. And for the first time in my life, I feel so much on the inside and I know how to express emotions on the outside. When uncomfortable feelings come up, I know I can't fix them, so I sit with them, allow them to pass. I've let a few layers go and I'm getting closer to my authentic or true self. As I get to know her, I realise that she embodies all those wonderful words that others have used to describe her, and accepting my wonderfulness means that I feel much more confident. Mum always called me stubborn, and maybe I am sometimes, and reframing this to determine sits so much better with me and encourages me to keep going when things are tough. I also realised how strong I am, another word that I never previously claimed. I always thought I needed support, and I do function better in a crisis with Roger by my side, but goodness me, I've been through a lot and I'm still standing. Well, more than standing, I'm jumping up and down with joy at the fabulous life I have. Biggest change has been in the relationship I have with my body and how it's now leading my mind and telling a story of strength, power and achievement. Deep connection I now have to my heart means that I am kinder and more compassionate and more understanding of both mine and other people's challenges. One of the biggest changes has been letting go of outcomes. Throughout my life, I had to have a plan with a defined outcome. Maybe that's what's changed is learning to trust. I've learned to trust my instinct. So when my inner self says write a book, I follow it without knowing what I might do afterwards. In the past, I just the thought of not knowing would have caused me to panic, and now I'm perfectly relaxed about it. I guess being more relaxed is another way I've changed. I'm so much more in touch with myself and my life. It's as though all my senses have been turned up. There's a lot more happiness and joy in my life and so much to be grateful for. Maybe the biggest change is that I have a deep inner peace and calmness, which grounds me, and it's like all the work I've done has brought me home to me. As I end this part of my story, I realise I haven't mentioned being childless. I will always be childless, in the same way that I will always be an only child who has lost both parents. But because of the work I've done, I can confidently say that all of these have shaped me, but none of them defines me.
Thank you, Leslie.
Thank you.
I know when we're sort of saying, I'd love you to do that chapter. I'm really glad that you did. I can never say, is it the process of the broken bowl and then the repairing it. It's just to say it gets more beauty each time it's broken, it repairs. And I think that is us.
It is. Yeah, it is.
It's so much.
It's interesting reflecting on that. I wrote that nearly 4 years ago, and I think I've continued. The whole process continues, doesn't it? It just keeps going, and life gets more beautiful.
Yeah,
keep going,
because we go across a little trigger we didn't expect, and we heal from that again, and we go forward. Every little crack creates beauty, and like you say, we're constantly reaching out and connecting to other people. A bit like that gold is connecting the pieces together.
Exactly. Yes.
It never stops. Wow, what an amazing night from all of us. And I think it just shows, I've written notes down because I don't want to say things, but I think it's really about us finding the one thing that helps us to remember and to release, whether that's through writing, through having something physical to go to or physical to touch, and being able to have the support of other people and reaching out and doing the community and the support groups. And it just shows we're not stuck with one way to heal, one way to remember, and that we can look at all of them. We can pick and choose what suits us best. And as long as we don't shut those doors down, I think we've got that opportunity to see those ways that we can try to help ourselves heal a little bit, or to understand our grief and move forwards with it, is really important. So is anybody else got anything they'd like to say before we sort of finish for the night? Go on, Chiara, please, just all.
If there are some questions in the Q&A.
Someone's saying they've got a painting. Go
to the questions first, then otherwise we won't get them done.
So someone's saying they've got a painting in their living room for this purpose. And I think that's lovely if you've got something you can look at again, and it brings you that happiness and that connection and that understanding is really important. Somebody's saying they'd like to actually start a movement and honour their story in Germany, and they'd like some advice. It's hard, it's not easy. Make connections with people. That's your first thing I'd say. Make connections with people here or elsewhere, and we can all try and link up and help each other. I don't want to go too much into depth for this because it's not specifically to this conversation, but I just want to address it before we sort of close tonight. How do you deal with being around people who are pregnant or had children? My cousin is due twins soon. All I feel is upset and anger. I can't see posts or be around them. I think Marielle is actually sending you a personal response there, which is good, but it's never easy. Not at the beginning initially. Now I think it is easy for me. I don't have a problem at all. I don't think there's ever been a time. I'm not saying that there won't be, and that's important to acknowledge that, because there might be a time that I find it hard, but I know I've got these resources of dealing with it through supporting the community, that I can get over it. Go on.
I think it's important to give yourself permission that if you can't face being around them at times, just don't be. Yeah. And I remember I found that very hard for myself, but because you think of what will everybody say, but it's just how you feel. You're kind of, sometimes you're just adding to it for yourself. So I think that's really important. It's a real grief that you're feeling, and it can sometimes be made worse in those situations. And it's okay not to go and see that person or be at that family event or whatever. Yeah.
Self-care, prioritize yourself. Your grief is worthy of being respected and honoured. Yeah. No matter how sometimes you sort of doubt yourself with other people, you think you're being judged, it doesn't matter. No. Put yourself first, or if it's on a social media account, hide them. No. Don't see their posts. That's one of the best tools. Give yourself your freedom to grieve how you need to grieve, without all these exterior things that, if you can hide them, like you say, or get away from them. And that's, it's good advice. I had a hysterectomy and removal of ovaries in May 2021. I feel as low as I can get. I'm not sure if due to surgical induced menopause, on HRT and antidepressants. I can't see a way forward. Do any of the panel have any advice how I step forward into the future when I feel broken? Somebody like to?
I would say it's quite important to see if you can see a counsellor personally. That's what I would say. There's just such a lot going on there that sometimes all you can do is be with yourself at a time like that. You can't move forward. You can just stand still where you are, but you do need a bit of help with that, you know. So it's finding somebody who gets that situation and what it means to that person. It isn't, you know, it's the implications of the hysterectomy and the, you know, removal of ovaries. So that's what I would say, really. Any help that you can get.
Not be afraid to turn down the first one and move on to the second one as well.
Definitely have a chat and see what you think, and it has to be somebody that understands. And you can't, you know, it's very hard to get through that on your own. It'll take you a lot longer. So that's what I would say.
I take there's some really interesting research into counselling, which says that it's actually not the training or the qualifications or certifications that the counsellor has, although it really is important to see a qualified counsellor. I'm just going to put that in there, but it's not those that make the massive difference to the outcomes of the counselling. It's the relationship between the client and the counsellor that has been proven to make the biggest difference. So I totally agree about check out the counsellors, and most counsellors will let you have a phone call or something with them before committing to counselling. So yeah, find somebody who you think you've got a good relationship with. That's really important.
I just like to reiterate really as well the importance of going to see a counsellor, but also about the value of honesty. I think so many of us go to see a counsellor or therapist once we actually reach that stage, and then we think, oh, my problem is smaller than other people's, and therefore I'm going to underplay how I feel. And that's not the case at all. This is a genuine feeling. It doesn't matter how big or how little other people perceive it. This is what they're there for, and you need to speak as honestly as possible, and they will not judge you. They will help you in a way that, you know, perhaps nobody else can, because everybody else around you maybe has got that personal vested interest, which a counsellor does not have. So be as open and honest as you can. And I've been through that process, not necessarily due to your personal circumstances with a hysterectomy, but, you know, I've been through the counselling process, and I'm now here, and I feel in a much better place. So just from my experience, it does get better. It really does. It might not feel like it now, but it does.
I think we can all contest to the fact that we do feel better now than where we were. We still admit there are triggers, but we have found that life gets easier around childlessness, and I'm happy to say I'm childless.
Me too.
And again, I've said earlier in the week, my childlessness used to be there, and I used to be hid behind it, and now it's back there somewhere, and I own it and control it. And it's not a case of answering the question of when will it get better, when will I stop grieving, when will I do this? You can't tell. We're all individual, and we all deal with it differently over different time periods.
Exactly, but you have to do the work, don't you? That's the key. I think we'd love to sit here and say that there's a magic wand that you spin around 3 times and it'll be better, but you can't, unfortunately. And I was talking to somebody the other day about this, that we all have to grieve in our lives. That's one thing that's a given, and we learn the skills by going to a counsellor, going to therapist, or whatever it is that we do. We're also learning skills for life, aren't we? So, you know, and you know, look at all of us here. We're still smiling, having a great life. That's possible for everybody.
And
I was just going to say, I think there's something massive in just getting involved with something like World Childless. I can remember the times before I engaged with movements like this, before I engaged with Gateway Women, before I found other people to share my experiences with, and the silence and the swallowing it back and the keeping it private. I think that was a big part of what made it so very, very difficult. And so the very fact that you're here, that you're part of this discussion this evening, that you've lit your candle is an amazing step to make.
Definitely. I know we could talk. Go on, Chiara, have you got one more?
Sorry, I just want to say before, but it kind of links in with what Vicky just said. You were asking us, I feel that when you express yourself, I mean, for me, it might be in song, however anybody does it, it takes your experience out from yourself and out there. And as it does that, it transforms. It doesn't stay the same, it changes. And, you know, when in, you know, World Childless Week, people share their stories, it's that thing about having your experience witnessed, particularly by people who have been through the same thing. That is massively transformative, you know, it just by doing that. And so, Vicky, what you're saying, just by connecting with other people with a similar experience, because you know that you're understood, and your grief is witnessed, and that's a huge, because a lot of the time when before that happens and we're trying to explain it, trying to work out what we feel, and also trying to talk to people about it, and they don't get it, it makes it worse. It's like sort of banging your head against a wall, isn't it? And so it's sort of, I think if you can find a way to express it, however, whether that's just talking to someone, writing, whatever, it transforms, I think. It stops it from being this kind of ball inside of you, doesn't it? Just stuck there.
I mean, there's been a couple of creativity webinars today, haven't there? And that, you know, that some
Yes.
ways of that, you know, really useful to find a way, as you say, get it out of your head in writing or some way, the ways that we have, or and there'll be some ideas on those other webinars that will be up there soon.
Yeah, they're all up there, bar this one and one other at the moment, and that's because it was a long one. But yeah, as you say, it's meditation and creativity. If people think I can't create, I don't know how to meditate, just try it. If it's not for you, it doesn't matter. But have 5 minutes of your time to sit there and just think, let's give it a go. Let's see what they're talking about. Because it might just be another way, again, like you say, for expressing yourself. And the more ways we've got, the better. Definitely, by far. I hate to say that we need to round this up, but I'd ask everybody again just to get their candles for one more time tonight, because it's time for us to extinguish them. But I'm looking down because I've written things down I want to say, but this, just because we're extinguishing the candle, it doesn't mean that the community is disappearing. We're still here. We're still there for support, for love, for strength, for courage, for everything we can get that we need is there in the community. And it's also by blowing out the candle, we're sort of like not forgetting or dishonoring the children that we wanted to love, that we wanted to sit beside us. We're not forgetting them either. And also sometimes extinguishing the candle is actually saying, I need some time for myself, for self-love, for self-care, for just a moment in time to be peaceful. So if you'd just like to blow your candles out with me, that'd be great. And I think once we've done that, the whole point is with a candle, we can always light it again whenever we want to connect to the community, to the children we lost. And we can use that to remember again in our own sweet way. But yeah, so I just want to say thank you, Vicky, Leslie, Susan, Muriel, Chiara, for joining me tonight, for sharing the ways that you are moving forward through your grief with what you use to help you, and for being open and honest. And yeah, it's been beautiful. And thank you to everybody who shared the name of their children that they wanted. I really appreciate that you shared those names with me. And if everybody's happy, then I'm afraid we have to say goodnight for tonight. But thank you for everything, ladies. Thanks. It's been a pleasure to have you here.